Emma Frame here, and welcome to Voices of Yoga podcast, co-hosted with Lindsay Porter, where we bring you inspiring yoga stories and insights from yogis and teachers from around the world. These stories highlight the benefits of yoga and encourage those who maybe haven't started yoga yet to get started, and for the more experienced to delve deeper. We hope you enjoy. This is podcast number 11.
Namaste and welcome to today's Voices of Yoga podcast. And today I'm delighted to be talking with a yoga teacher based in London who's a former lawyer with the Home Office, and her name is Lorna. And it's a very special interview for me today because as well as knowing Lorna through her yoga, I've also known her for a very long time, growing up as children, and through our different lifestyles we've evolved both into yoga teachers as synchronicity happens. So we're going to get going and find out more about Lorna. So namaste and welcome today, Lorna.
Namaste, Lindsay. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. So Lorna, as when we start off podcasts and introducing people, we often start off with a question asking them about how yoga found them and it came into their lives. And this is a really interesting question for me to ask you, because as long as I've known you, and I've known you doing yoga way before I even knew what it was about, I don't think I've ever actually asked you or heard the story about how you came to get involved in yoga and at such a young age.
Well, I grew up in a house that, my family home, with a mother who loved yoga. So as a young child, I would watch her practicing yoga, which obviously shows it's incredibly beneficial for us as yoga teachers and parents to involve our children. And it was a very different style of yoga that she practiced, but I was very curious. Went off to school, university, and it just kind of fitted. I just started to explore it. It fitted my life then. I was also practicing ballet, practicing martial arts. So yoga worked really well with regards to the flexibility and the strength. But yeah, very organic process from the home. Came from the home.
Nice. That's taken me like about 40 years.
Yeah.
So one of the qualities I've always admired about you, Lorna, is this ability that you have, and you do it so naturally, to stand firm on an issue, not to be swayed by other people's opinions. You've always had this sort of place where you seem to know where you're going to or where you stand on a subject. And I'm really interested to ask you how yoga has played a part in that about you, or vice versa.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I was a lawyer for many years, and in fact I still consider myself to be a lawyer, currently a resting lawyer, with a background in human rights. I joined Namaste International when I was very young, studied civil liberties, police governance, accountability, human rights law. So there was always that strong sense of social justice, awareness of right and wrong, but there's often a grey area, and so that's always been a huge part of my life. Working in law as a clinical negligence lawyer, and then moving towards the Home Office where I practice prison law and human rights. I think yoga kind of cements that. Yoga is incredibly humbling, but it also helps you to develop a greater awareness, empathy, compassion, and I think it just kind of confirms that sense of what's the right thing to do and what you feel is the right thing to do. So it's kind of both. I don't know if that sense of standing up for certain causes or whatever necessarily comes from yoga. I think it was kind of personality was there, but perhaps it's been kind of amplified through yoga.
Nice. So talking of grey areas, one of the things we've been talking about offline was about how the way we deliver yoga and interact with yoga, both within our, I suppose, people that are coming to yoga, but the wider yoga world. During lockdown, grey area about how is this going to change the yoga industry? Do you want to give us your view on this sort of massive topic?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been fascinating. I mean, one thing that I've found very positive is that this has shown how incredibly resilient and incredibly creative yogis are. And that's so positive and heartening. We've all had to, whatever industry you're working in, we've all had to pull together, we've all had to find new ways of working, and putting yoga out there to ensure that the people that we teach still have the amazing benefits of yoga. Prior to lockdown, prior to events, yoga was generally studio taught, gyms, private classes, workplace, schools, some online. Now it's moved mainly online via Zoom. At the moment, in my view, we're in the most difficult place because we're not fully out of lockdown. Everything isn't quite open. We haven't quite adapted to the new norm. We don't really know what the new norm is. So there's massive uncertainty. This is almost worse than how it was in March when everything kind of just stopped. So now we're having to almost work out what the new rules are. So I think at the moment we've got teachers are continuing to teach online, which is a very different world. And some studios will consider opening eventually. There will be more outside yoga. What do I see in the future? I think it's going to be quite difficult because I think there perhaps will be less studios. There's going to be a very high demand for yoga. There are going to be a lot of yoga teachers who are used to teaching in studios, and those studios will no longer exist. So I think we are going to see us as yoga teachers offering yoga in a variety of formats, online, in person, as opposed to perhaps just the one way that we were used to doing it before. And we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to be creative to continue.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that's one benefit of yoga practices, helps feed that creativity.
Yeah, well, it enables us, excuse the pun, to be flexible. So we have to adapt. We have to adapt, and that's one of the most amazing. It's an incredibly amazing aspect of yoga is that we can bring it to people through various different mediums, and as long as we are compassionate to us, we've got to be kind to ourselves as well, because as yoga teachers, we are empaths. We tend to soak up and absorb emotions. We've also got to look out for ourselves. There's got to be quite a lot of self-care. Because it has been quite exhausting. But I'm positive that we can still find ways to teach yoga, but it's going to be very different, I think.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
So my next question and comment is quite an interesting one for me, because although I feel like we teach and explore quite different styles of yoga, you have been one of the key influences in my life going onto the yoga path. And people that have read my book, Whirlpool's Yoga and the Balance of Life, will maybe remember the story of where Lorna and I traveled to Cambodia together, and that was the first time Lorna was doing her self-practice every day, and it really made me question about starting my own and things. And Lorna and I both quite well travelled, I suppose, during our lives. I'm interested to ask you, Lorna, this idea of and I know we can't do it at the moment, but generally people like to travel, explore yoga in different countries with different people, just do it in different parts of the world. Do you think that helps people embody their practice, or does it not really matter where you do yoga? Is the grass greener when you go to another country? I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I was having a conversation about this with somebody recently when we were talking about, yoga sort of teacher trainings, and whether or not you should train in India, whether or not you should, what kind of course should you do? So very interesting. I love traveling. Obviously the world is currently in a slightly different place at the moment. Cambodia was amazing, and I remember those days. I remember getting up really early to practice yoga, and eventually us doing it together, and it was just an amazing trip. For me personally, I think it's fabulous to be able to travel and explore practicing yoga, studying yoga in different countries, especially India. Just because yoga in different cultures is so different to how we practice and teach it and study it here in the UK, in the West. Not only is it in the physical sense lovely to be elsewhere and in that beautiful environments, whether it is somewhere in Asia or South America or wherever. But I do think that you learn a lot more about the philosophy of yoga and actually the home of yoga. I don't think you need to necessarily teach or study or practice abroad, but I do think it adds a richness. And I do think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful to add that to your understanding or knowledge of yoga if possible. I've practiced all over the place, and it's been amazing.
Yeah. Fortunate we are.
I know, very much.
So one of the other things, Lorna, I talked about you being an influencer to me, but actually you're an influencer to many. And if you haven't come across Lorna, she has an Instagram account which is called Dynamic Flow Yoga. Have I got that right?
That's right. Yes.
And Lorna's been growing that, and I think we were just mentioning it's just sort of tipped the 5,000 followers. So I'm interested just to explore, because a lot of people into growing these social media accounts. What do you feel like it's doing for you, and what's your motivation behind using that as your medium?
Okay, there's a very simple answer there. The simple answer is that I don't have a website, which I've toyed with the idea of having a website, but most of my work comes from word of mouth. I've been teaching for nearly 18 years throughout London, so I have a really good, established client base. But I have toyed with the idea of having a website for a while. And very aware of Instagram, but perhaps a little apprehensive. I do have 2 tweens, and one of them particularly encouraged me to explore it. So in fact, I've only been on Instagram now for 11 months. So I started my account last May. And it's an amazing medium, amazing way to perhaps raise your public profile if that's what you wish to do. It's also an amazing way to connect with other yogis and other people and find out what else is happening out there. It's kind of a news resource, really. What are other people doing? That sounds fascinating. Is that something you'd like to explore? Find out about workshops. It has its downsides. We're perhaps all aware of its downsides, and I think it can create some unhealthy habits, and you have to be aware of that. The most important thing about Instagram is being aware that it is a community. It's a community in a very different sense to the physical community that we're aware of, and as yogis in particular, we really embrace and really enjoy. So you have to engage. You have to engage with people. It isn't a website. It isn't a case of, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. It's acknowledging what other people are doing, and it's having a two-way conversation.
Nice. And thank you. If you haven't explored her Instagram, she's always putting amazing videos on about new routines and giving lots of ideas, I'm sure, to many teachers that take it into their own practices. So thank you for that.
It is fun. It is fun. Yeah, it's fun.
I'm going to throw a bit of a cheeky question at you here now, just because I can. Do you, and you probably can't mention any names, but with your London kind of network, do you find yourself teaching celebrities, people that we might know about, see in the media? Do you have many clients like that?
I have, actually. Yes, and mainly through some of the bigger studios. So it's quite a fascinating world here in London, and obviously yoga has grown, and there are many studios and many yoga teachers, and obviously when we have well-known people come over here, but I'm not mentioning any names.
Interesting. I suppose that's where the yoga also comes in, to keep yourself grounded and also
yeah. Sometimes you find yourselves in situations where, when you're maybe at a class, you're teaching a class, and you suddenly think, oh, that's such and such a. But yeah, no, it's fascinating.
Is there anything else, messages you would like to share with the listeners today about yoga or your yoga teaching journey?
For me, and I know that you had a similar journey. I know that for me, becoming a yoga teacher, my journey was law to yoga, and there are quite a few of us, but it was quite a jump. It was quite a leap. I did it gradually, so I managed to practice law 4 days a week, so I was able to grow my yoga teaching. You know, I think yoga is having another moment. It's very much needed at the moment. It's you know, it's great to be able to offer it online, great to be able to offer it via all the resources we have, whether that's Zoom or YouTube or Instagram. And it's lovely to see more and more people practicing yoga. I'm perhaps a plea that, you know, people need to remember that yoga teachers are living human beings and need to earn a living as well. Yeah, it's just, you know, it's an amazing job to have. For me, being able to teach children, being able to teach teenagers, which I'm really passionate about, being able, you know, teaching dynamic vinyasa, teaching mandala flows, teaching a whole variety of styles of yoga. It's incredibly exciting and it's worthwhile.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And can you remind the listeners and the people watching on the video where they can find out and go to? Obviously not a website, but there are other places. Just remind us again where.
Yes. So no website, but you can connect with me, and it is all about connections, and it's lovely to connect. You can connect with me on Instagram at Dynamic Flow Yoga. I'm also on Facebook, Dynamic Flow Yoga. You know, and both of those have my email details as well. So, you know, I'm fairly traceable via those sources.
Lovely, thank you. And we always like to ask our guests to share with them a favourite quote or something that's inspiring their practice or their journey at the moment. What will you offer us today, Lorna?
Yes, well, I'm actually just checking because it's a bit of a tongue twister. So thinking about quotes, if you have a look at my Instagram feed, you will see that I actually love quotes. I embrace, I mean, I love the kind of the creative side of yoga, you know, because I love art and music and playlists and going to art galleries and lyrics. So I love soundtracks and, you know, playing with words as well in my yoga classes. So there are lots of quotes. It's incredibly hard to think of a quote. There are lots of quotes about yoga specifically and the balance and the benefits. But there's one quote that I read quite frequently, specifically in my teen classes. And it's a Dr. Seuss quote. And it is, "Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." And I love that because for me, that sums up yoga. How, you know, it's all encompassing. Yoga's for everybody. And, you know, and it's just about celebrating our uniqueness. It's incredibly transformative, but it really is just about us as individuals.
Wonderful. Well, a little mini celebration from me because it's been so nice to connect with you today and just hear more about your yoga journey. So thank you very much, Lorna.
Namaste. Thank you. It's been really lovely. Namaste.
Thanks for tuning in to Voices of Yoga, and we hope you feel inspired. You can find more of our free podcasts at www.voicesofyoga.com, and we are on all the main podcast platforms too. We are very open to comments and suggestions, so if you'd like to also leave us a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. If you would like to know when the most recent podcast is going to be broadcast, you can sign up to our newsletter on the website and we will drop you an email with that recent update. Voices of Yoga is our passion project, and if you like what we're doing and you would like to support us, it would be very much appreciated. And you can do that through a very small donation on our website on the donation button if you feel so inclined. If you would like to collaborate with us in terms of sponsorship, advertising, or even suggest coming on and being a guest, then please drop us an email at voicesofyoga@mail.com. So thanks again, and we look forward to bringing you another inspiring yoga story next week. Namaste.